So rather than have a standard speech by our keynote, Mr. Rice actually asked that we do something different and have just a conversation with a little Q&A. And then we're going to open it up to the group for a little Q&A. And first of all, I think we need to, I want to be one of the first to say happy birthday. This has to be one of your biggest birthday parties.
I used to have people pay to come to my birthdays. It's one of my best fundraisers, but I can't do that anymore.
So the first thing I wanted to ask was, how's your drive into West Seattle today?
It was easy. Going back is another story. But coming, it was very quick.
I imagine you have a lot to look forward to going back. There's some sort of machine under the city. We don't know what it's doing down there.
It's a fire right below our condo.
So while I was on one of those wonderful commutes going downtown from West Seattle, one of the things that I was thinking about is, while you were in office, did you foresee this rapid growth and change in the city?
Boy, yes and no. When I first came to Seattle, it was the last person leaving Seattle turned off the lights. We had just begun to see the whole downturn in our economy. So it was a tough journey coming back. But then, over time, one of the things I really love about this region and where we are is the can-do attitude. People said we can put some things together. Economic development councils, chambers and the like, all came together to say we can make investments in this region that make a difference. And I think you began to see that. I worked for Rainier Bank back in the day, and one of the things that I always felt was that you needed to have a strong banking financial community to make the kinds of investments that you need to be. If you make the right investments, everybody benefits from it. So I think that I felt optimistic and never I would say disappointed that we wouldn't be where we are today.
So what advice would you give to current elected officials on how to deal with this rapid change and growth?
I don't give advice to current elected officials. I didn't like anyone giving me that, so I try to keep my mouth shut and no comment. I always tell everybody no comments is an answer. I think some people chastise me because I was a little more collaborative. I always felt like give everybody a voice, find everybody a seat at the table, and negotiate where you need to go from there. I think it comes from me being the youngest of 4 children and the smallest. I always had to negotiate. And so therefore, I learned that skill early, and it helped me a long ways. But I really do believe in listening to people and then showing them how what you heard you put into action. I think the more that people know that you've heard them, the better they're going to feel about what you do. It isn't that they're going to agree with you, but that they heard you, and that you can show that you heard them in some of the things you do. If you can do that, I think you gain the confidence that you need to really move forward. And that's kind of the principles that we try to put forward in our administration and moving along.
So I'll turn that question back towards the audience and say, what would you tell us as business owners and citizens of West Seattle that we could do to help deal with the rapid change in growth?
Well, I think you're doing it now by the organizations you belong in, to also understand it isn't just your business, it's your community, and being involved in your community as much as you are with your business. Because the more you have that finger on the pulse in that way, the better off you are. It really makes a difference, and I think that one of the things that I see about West Seattle, not only geographically, but you're in a very unique place as community, as residents, and where people live. And so there's a sense of community that's strong. And I think it is felt no matter where you go. And I think that spirit, for want of a better word, helps to make sure that your voice is heard. And I think it's always been that way as you move along. I have a strong affinity to West Seattleites former mayor, Nichols, was my legislative assistant. Irene Stewart ran managed one of my campaigns. David Dello was here, is a part of it. So one of the things, it's probably I'll get in trouble for saying this, but I like the at-large system a little bit because in some ways you had to go to all over the city rather than one place. So you had to make sure your presence was known everywhere. And that made a difference in sometimes, so you couldn't leave some things out as you move along. With all due respect. So you couldn't just say, I'm the Mount Baker. I grew up in Mount Baker. I'm the Mount Baker person. You had to make sure your decisions could be justified no matter where you go. And that's the city. So it's probably best that I got to run for mayor, so I didn't have to. I don't know if I could have won in a district when I got ready to run. Matter of fact, if I had to run in the district, some of you won't remember, I would have had to run against Sam Smith. Yeah. And that would have probably been the end of my career. So I was happy that I could run at large and form new coalitions.
So speaking of while you were mayor, what are you most proud of during your time as mayor, and how did you achieve that success?
That's a hard one. I'm trying to write a book now. Honest, not a big book, but what do I like best? Clearly downtown, the rebirth of downtown, and the economic development meant a lot to us, at the time. Pacific Place, got a lot of flack for it, the garage, had to build it, but it made a difference with downtown. The first education summit, which I applaud the mayor on his second one, of bringing the city together over the issue of busing, which, whether you liked it or not, was very divisive in trying to make a reinvestment, which led to the family and education levy, making every child safe, healthy, and ready to learn. Getting people to focus on what it is that we want to invest in, rather than what we want to take away from. Those are the kinds of things that really make a difference. I think one of the things, the third thing would be, to some degree, recognizing that Seattle is a regional player, not just a kind of by itself, but really is part of the region, making sure that it participates on a regional scale for what the things you need to do. Those are the kinds of things I'm most proud of. It's probably, at the end of the day, being an honest broker for change. That's what I like to use, is making sure that we are in the mix of talking about the issues, because if I can support those who are outside of Seattle, they can support me. But if I'm always thinking parochial about Seattle, then it's hard to make your case when you really need them. And that's really the key.
So I'll ask you a little more tricky question. Is there anything you wish you would have done differently? That's one of those ones where they say, what's your weakness? And you say, I'm a workaholic. You don't look bad. I don't know if I can even tell you that now. You know what I mean? I made mistakes, but, step up and fess up to them early, and you can move on. But if you try to justify what you haven't done, you make a mistake. I want to do one thing, because I wish the mayor was here. I got to applaud the mayor and the Seattle Police Department for their work over these May Day celebrations and how well they managed it. That is tough. And I think the department and the people held up the right way, and I would love to say you did a good job. And I'm not pandering. I think you did a damn good job. So I have two more questions, and then we're going to open it up to the audience for some questions. First one, tell us a little bit about your book.
Okay. The book is about why I got in the race for mayor successfully. I ran for mayor unsuccessfully, but remember there was an initiative, and whether you're for it or not, I'm not going to get into that, to repeal busing in the city of Seattle. And it was a very divisive issue. And the initiative was crafted in a very smart way. If the school district didn't repeal busing, all the money that the city gave to the city would be held in escrow until they did so. So, and then it got everybody, it got to be racially divisive, it got to be everything, and I had to run for mayor before I lost, and again thinking that nobody would ever elect me. So I kept waiting for somebody to stand up and take a position about what is quality education, and let's talk about what we ought to be doing in the positive rather than the negative, and nobody did. So literally, on the last day of the election, almost 7 hours before the deadline, I gathered with my good friends Bob Gorgody and Stark, and we sat down and I crafted a message saying, it's time to heal in the city, it's time to bring people back, and that I would step into this breach and run because I thought it was the wrong public policy for the city at the time. And it was kind of liberating. I started a campaign with no money, but there were a lot of people who wanted me to run, but I was kind of gun shy, having lost it before, so I wasn't really eager to do it. But I felt it was time to step up. And so that's what kind of motivated it. And I would just add parenthetically, that's probably what gave me kind of the freedom as mayor. Because once you kind of come in and you didn't sell your soul promising everybody and all those endorsement meetings and everything else, I was kind of there. I was a known commodity, and it was a voice, I think, that some people wanted, and we were able to kind of bring that together. And we then, after getting elected, we called for an education summit. The mayor just had his last Saturday. It was a really good coming together where people kind of set aside that negativism and start talking about what is the positive they want for students. So it helped with the way we did, from whether it was education, growth management, the kinds of things we do. I was also one of the people who was wanting to put a ring around Seattle. I wanted to make sure that we were a regional player, and that we understood that economic development was as important to the city as growth management.
So my last question is that your mayoral terms paralleled the time period of a local icon in Seattle who's going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, Baseball Hall of Fame, later this year. What was, from your perspective, what was Ken Griffey Jr.'s impact on the city during your time in?
Yeah, that's perfect. I just got interviewed for a documentary, and I never thought of it in the way you said it until I was doing the documentary. Junior came to town just maybe a year before I became mayor, and it was like a wonderful ride. To watch him and watch what was going, and then to watch the love and the devotion that people got from the mariners, that was just fantastic. And then, that late summer drive, for the pennant, which was unbelievable. I know people say, oh, sports, it's terrible. Why is the city or anybody getting involved in sports? But, it's hard to get the spirit of a city. And it's captured sometimes most in your teams, whether it's the Sounders, whether it's the Sonics, no matter who it is, it's a part of it. But nonetheless, it was fun. It was fun, and I was there in the Kingdom when that big hit was made. Junior ran around those bases and safe at home. Safe at home meant a lot to us because it also meant that we were able to keep the Mariners safe at home. Because we really might have lost them if we hadn't done that. And it gave everybody a esprit de corps that you can't really capture in any other way.
Do we have time for some questions from the audience?
Sure.
All right. Any questions from the audience?
I paid most of the people not to.
No? Oh, got one up.
What do you think about the affordability issues that we're starting to see in Seattle? When I was growing up, when you've been here for a long time, West Seattle especially was as much blue collar as anything. And what do you think about that? And what can we do to help make sure that this continues to be a place where our workers can also live?
It's on several levels. Clearly, housing is one. Jobs is the second one. Affordable jobs. Jobs with good wages. So that people can pay for their food and pay for their shelters in the way that they can. And also the education system, not only just in the K through 12, but the community colleges, so that people can be skilled to still be competitive. I really do believe that the biggest issue facing this country is the equity issue. And I don't want to get into who, but between wages and all. And it's not easy. And I want to make sure that that's why it's so divisive. If you own a business and you're trying to make a profit and you're trying to deal with wages and what's the biggest driver in a lot of your business is the price of goods and wages that are involved in it. And so that balance is pretty hard. My mom and dad own a restaurant and tavern, and it was kind of tough sometimes. But that balance is what is really important. So you need good training, folk ed, to get people into the positions that they can be competitive. You need housing options so that people can find that pathway. When I was growing up, your parents moved from affordable housing to a better housing, moving up the ladder. You can't do that easily. And the problem you have is that where you find affordable housing may be so far from your job that you can't get to the place you need to be. So it's understanding that you have to have nodes of development. You have to have education system that understands the diversity of who we want to educate and giving them all pathways to economic opportunity. That's a big job, but it's one that if we do it well, we'll be all right. But it's also making sure that everybody, when we're asking for housing levies, school levies, other kinds of things for people, affordable housing and the like, don't always look at it about yourself, because if you don't do that, you can really have a negative impact on the economy itself. So saying you aren't for it doesn't mean that somehow you're going to have a better economy and a better place where you can be.
Morning.
Morning.
So, working for Uncle Bank, we're really invested in engaging with our communities. And I heard you earlier say that you believe that strong financial institutions and strong banking partners was sort of critical to building Seattle up. Could you give us a sense of, at least from our position, what do we need to do in West Seattle and Seattle proper to really make the most of those partnerships and engage the community in more meaningful ways?
I was going to be flippant and say, make good loans. I think having worked for a bank, and I worked for Rainier Bank, but making sure that people could see, number one, the bank as an integral part of the community, not only by the loans you make, but also by the things you sponsor. Housing, jobs, new businesses, the kinds of things that show that you kind of understand that threat. And then as bankers, participating in the community, not just standing there in that bank building, but also being out in that community. I always say, if I can see the face that serves me in the places that they are, then I know the place is better. But if I can't see you in the community and where you're going to be, then it's hard to say that you're a player in the community. And so you've got to spend a lot more time than just moving up the ladder, but also broadening the field.
Thank you, everybody, for the questions. Before you go, we have a couple thank you gifts for you.
Well, first of all, your wife very graciously
She sure did.
put off your celebrations so that you could be here today. And I was a little concerned about you walking in the door with your hands not full with something. So we have something for her, okay? Flower Lab put together a great bouquet, so she will be.
Oh, she loves these.
So that'll be perfect. Hamilton, I'm going to let you take those back. And then I have our I Love West Seattle envelope, and in it there is a gift certificate for dinner at Fresh Bistro. And there's nothing like having that new car, clean car, and I didn't buy you a car, but the next best thing is there's a detailing in there from Autobuff, so it'll be really good. And you remember
He has a picture of me when I had hair with his daughter, and he was holding her in his arms.
And look at her today. She's no longer there, though. And then, you remember those cakes I told you about with personality? Okay, we have one for you. Donna Lawson made up a special for you. So, great happy birthday.